Hi, I'm Stuart. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Thanks for viewing my video. In this video I'm going to give my reading wrap-up for the week of September 8th through September 14th. I completed one book this week, so I'm going to give a review of it. I read parts of 4 more books, so I'll talk briefly about those 4 books. And I went to Barnes & Noble recently, so I got 8 books, and I'm going to talk briefly about the 8 books I got, a bit of a book haul. I'm going to talk about the Wobble I completed and one I'm currently working on. I'm going to talk about a Lego set that I'm working on. And I'll probably talk about other events that are going on in my life at the moment too. The book I completed was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I read this book as part of a book club on Fable. I'm with the band, moderated by MJ, and also as there's also a chat on Voxer, Agatha group read, to discuss the book too, also created by MJ. Before I give my review of the book, I just want to give a brief author bio. It wasn't actually a bio in the book, but I found it on Sarah J. Maas's website. Sarah J. Maas is the prolific #1 New York Times and internationally best-selling author of The Throne of Glass, Court of Thorns and Roses, and Crescent City series, which have sold more than 38 million copies in English worldwide and are published in 38 languages. Maas is one of the most successful authors of the modern era, generating a far-reaching and ever-growing fan base of readers, as well as a TikTok phenomenon, with a hashtag for her A Court of Thorns and Roses series having several billion views. The book is told in the first person by Feyre. When the book begins, Feyre is in the woods in the middle of winter, snow on the ground, and she's hunting. She sees a deer, but as she's about to shoot the deer, a wolf comes in the picture, a huge wolf, and she hesitates, but ultimately she shoots the wolf and kills it, and she shoots and kills the deer too. She skins the wolf and takes its pelt, and she takes the pelt and the deer home with her. Feyre's family was a well-to-do family a few years back, but they've fallen on hard times. And Feyre lives with her father and her 2 older sisters. The only reason they survive is because of Feyre. If not for her success as hunting and the meat she gets that sustains them, and the pelt she gets that she sells to get their remaining necessities, they wouldn't survive. She's not treated particularly well by her sisters, especially her older sister. Her younger sister isn't too bad, but she's kind of more oblivious. And her father is just kind of mentally broke, I think mainly because both his wife had died and because the businesses that he had failed, and he got badly beaten too. So it's up to the youngest daughter, Feyre, to keep the family going. The world she lives in is a world that is divided between human lands and fey lands. About 500 years ago there was a war, and there was a treaty that humans would keep on their side, Fey would keep on their side. There's a wall erected between them, at least in the lands that Feyre is. There's other parts of the world that I think it's different, but not too long after she kills the wolf, a very angry Fey barges into their cottage, and Feyre admits that she had killed the wolf. It turns out that the wolf was a Fey who had shifted into wolf form. So as a punishment for this, she has to go live in the Fey world for the rest of her lives with what turns out to be a High Lord of the Fey, Tamlin, which is one of their leaders. There's various groups of Fey. He's the head of the Spring Court, we learn soon after. So she has to go live there. And the story goes from there. In the early part of the book, after the initial Feyre hunting and her being confronted by Tamlin, the Fey High Lord, the book didn't have a lot of tension, I didn't think, for a while. It almost seemed cozy, but the tension soon ramped up, and from that point on the book was really very interesting. The author gradually introduced the Fey world to us which I thought was good. There was a spot in the latter part of the book, there was a chapter which was very info-dumpy, which was a bit jarring. But mostly she gradually introduced the Fae world to us, and the world in general. And I found her world building really good. I like the way the romantic relationship developed. I should say that this is a romantasy, so that's a fantasy where romance is primary over the fantasy as opposed to the reverse. As the book went on, Feyre found herself in more and more tense, difficult situations. The spicy scenes were very mild. There was nothing graphic, really. Nothing I think to be concerned about. There were some quite brutal scenes, though, that might be concerned for some people. There was one particular one, I'm not going to give details because it would be a spoiler. It was kind of almost stomach-turning what happened. So there is that aspect to it. Overall, I found the book very interesting. I liked it a lot. I liked the characters, Feyre, some of the Fae anyway, not all the Fae, but some of the Fae. Well, I found them all interesting, but some of them I liked and some of them I didn't like. Feyre had to make some difficult decisions along the way, some of which I kind of wish Sarah J. Maas had come up with a different way for her to do it, but it made sense in terms of the story. I found Feyre an appealing heroine. I thought it mostly made sense what she's able to do. It is a fantasy, so there is some suspension of disbelief required, but I thought it mostly made sense, the things she did throughout the story. I recommend this book for anyone who wants to read a romantasy, as long as you're able to accept a few quite brutal scenes. I think it's a good entry point. It's only the second romantasy book I've read. I read Fourth Wing, so it's only the second one I read, but I think this one would be a good entry point for you if you like to get into the genre. And I wasn't even completed with the book, but I was well along before I decided that I was going to read the next book. And I'm really glad I finally read a Sarah J. Maas book. I wanted to for a while, but I didn't get around to it. I'm glad I did. I rated the book 4 stars. Sarah J. Maas did a great job, I think, describing the beauty of the Fae world. I mean, it's brutal in a lot of ways, but the scenes, the vegetation, the house that Tamlin lives in, I think she did a great job doing that, and the world building too. I think I mentioned that already, but I think she did a great job in the world building. Now I'm just going to read a short passage from the book so you can get an idea of the writing style. The day of the fire night, Callan May, Tamlin had called it, dawned, and I didn't see Tamlin or Lucian all day. As the afternoon shifted into dusk, I found myself again at the main crossroads of the house. None of the bird-faced servants were to be found. The kitchen was empty of staff, and the food they had been preparing for 2 days. The sound of drums issued. The drum beats came from far away, beyond the garden, past the game park, into the forest that lay beyond. They were deep probing. A single beat echoed by 2 responding calls, summoning. I stood by the doors to the garden, staring out over the property as the sky became awash in hues of orange and red. In the distance, upon the sloping hills that led into the woods, a few fires flickered, plumes of dark smoke marring the ruby sky. The unlit bonfires I spotted 2 days ago. Not invited, I reminded myself. Not invited to whatever party had all the kitchen fairies tittering and laughing among one another. The drums turned faster, louder. Though I had grown accustomed to the smell of magic, my nose prickled with the rising tang of metal, stronger than I had yet sensed it. I took a step forward and halted on the threshold. I should go back in. Behind me, the setting sun stained the black and white tiles of the hall floor a shimmering shade of tangerine, and my long shadow seemed to pulse to the beat of the drums. Now I'm just going to talk briefly about the 4 other books I've read part of this week. First is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is another book I'm reading as part of a Fable book club. Tiachu's book club by Tia at tiachu. The book club has a schedule that Tia established, which I'm trying to follow. The book is quite long, but it only has 7 chapters. And this past week I read actually the 4th chapter, or the 3rd chapter by accident, earlier than I was supposed to. But as of today, we're supposed to be done by the first couplet, the 3rd and 4th chapter. So I am. I'm quite enjoying it. There's a lot of point of views in this book. There's different timelines. And the 3rd chapter introduced a new POV, the 4th another POV. So there is some respect of the readers to be able to follow the multiple characters, the multiple timelines. But I am quite interested. And there's a strong mystery element to this, and I'd be interested to see how it turns out. I'm still reading The Middle Ages, A Graphic History by Eleanor Janega. The more I read this book, the more I like this book. As I said in a previous video, it is History 101, but for someone like myself, I actually need that. And for what's a long period of time, I think it does a great job summarizing it. So I think it is a good entry-level book for a person who's like myself and maybe hasn't even thought about the Middle Ages since they were back in school. And I can't remember how much they taught about the Middle Ages to us. It's too long ago. The 3rd is Ruinsong by Julia Ember. This is a book that I listen to on audiobook when I can't sleep. I frequently suffer from insomnia, so although it doesn't help put me to sleep, which I kind of hoped that audiobooks did when I was listening like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, it does at least pass the time. I listen to another hour of it. Enjoying the book, but as I said before, it's a very grim world. I think there is going to be a romance in it. I'm not absolutely positive of that, though. And the final book is one I started this week. It's The Murder at the Vicarage by Agatha Christie. It's Miss Marple #1 book. I thought of reading this book after watching a recent video by Pat at Book Chat with Pat. She said that Miss Marple is one of her favorite characters, and I'd read a lot of Poirot books, mostly in my youth, a few times more recently. But to my memory, I've never read a Miss Marple book. I am quite enjoying this book. It was a little jarring at first, though, because this book is not actually told from Miss Marple's POV. It's told in a first-person perspective by a vicar. So that kind of threw me a little bit. I kind of had to reread the first page to make sure I understood it correctly. I'm not going to investigate that until I'm done with the book to see why that choice was made, but I'm kind of hoping that maybe further Miss Marple books are told by Miss Marple's perspective. Because so far in this book, and I'm about a quarter of the way through, Miss Marple is actually just one of many characters in it. So there are others that are more notable than her, so interesting how it's developed. But I am enjoying the book. This past Wednesday, I went to a Barnes & Noble. It's been about 4 months since I was actually in a bookstore, and I always like to be amongst books every so often. I ended up buying 8 books. 3 of them I planned to buy before I went there, and 5 of them I decided to get while I was there. The first book I got is Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. It's the 2nd book in the Agatha series. As I said, I got this book before I finished Agatha, although I was mostly finished. It's a rather thick book, as you can kind of see from here. I do know that as she got more and more popular, she wrote longer and longer books. Not sure when I'm going to get to this, but I'm looking forward to it. And as I said when I reviewed Agatha, I'm really glad I finally started reading her books. The second book I got is The Wobbles, Crochet, Amigurumi for Every Occasion by Justine II. I have a lot of leftover yarn from the kits I've been doing, so I've been wanting to get this book for a little while. It'll hopefully give me some good suggestions on how to use the extra yarn that I have. Justine II is the one who actually came up with the concept of the Wobbles, and she and her husband run the company. The third book I got that I had planned to get before I went to Barnes & Noble was The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. This is a romance. Read a little bit from the back. Blurb says, an escapist masterpiece, truly glorious. Vogue on Red, White, and Royal Blue. Actually, that's one of her previous books. Theo and Kid have been a lot of things. Childhood best friends, crushes, lovers, and now estranged exes. After a brutal breakup on a flight to their dream European food and wine tour, they exit each other's lives. Time apart has done them good. Theo is a bartender and an aspiring sommelier, hopefully I pronounced that right, with a long roster of lovers. Kit graduated as the reigning sex god of his pastry school and now bakes at one of the finest restaurants in Paris. All that remains is the unused voucher for the European tour that never happens. 4 years later, it seems like a great idea to finally take the trip. Solo, separately. I said in a recent tag I did that Casey McQuiston I thought would become one of my must-buy, my auto-buy authors, but I said I was going to read 2 other books of hers that I hadn't read yet that I had before I got this one, but the Barnes & Noble visit kind of throws stuff like that out the window. The next book I got is Binding 13, Boys of Toman, number 1, by Chloe Walsh. This is a book I learned about from a video by Kayla V at Reading with Kayla V. Actually, I think more than one video. I think she's talking about this in more than one video. She was really looking forward to this edition. She couldn't find it at her Barnes & Noble. This is a special edition, and she got it by mail order. So when I saw the book at Barnes & Noble, I remembered that she had mentioned it, and I thought about it a bit, and I decided to get it. It's actually a rugby romance, which I've not actually read any sports romances yet. I do have one hockey romance that I bought, but this is a rugby romance. So I'll just read a little bit about it. He wants to save her. She wants to hide. She's damaged. He's determined. Fate brought them together. Love binds them. Johnny Kavanagh has everything going for him. On the rugby pitch, he's a force to be reckoned with, even plagued with a hidden injury. Life has never been easy for Shannon Lynch. Bullied and tortured, she arrives at Toman College midway through the school year, praying for a fresh start and desperate to shake off the demons that plague her. I have to admit the bullying part of it was a little off-putting to me, but that'll probably be a little difficult for me to get through, but I do look forward to the book. You can see it's got the pink edge. It's a really thick book, and not only thick, but you can see like the print is kind of small, so quite a chunker of a book. Next book I got was Goth by Atsuchi. Just like the cover of this book, it pulled me toward it. The cover let me know that it's a Japanese horror book. Just read a little of the back. As horrifying as it is entertaining, Will Alexander, Rain Taxi. Marino is the strangest girl in school. How could she not be, given her obsession with brutal murders? There are plenty of murders to grow obsessed with. The town in which he lives is a magnet for serial killers. She and her schoolmate will go to any length to investigate the murders, even putting their own bodies on the line. And they don't want to stop the killers. Moreno and friends simply want to understand them. And the new Heiko Soro edition features the previously untranslated bonus novelette, Marino's Souvenir Photo. So this looks like a good book to read as we head into the Halloween season. Another book I got is The Champions by Kara Thomas. This is a sequel to The Cheerleaders from her, which I do haven't read yet. It was on my list of 40 books I wanted to read in 2024. I've done very poorly on the list, as I've talked about in previous videos. But I will read that book before I read this book. This book focuses on the football team, but it is, as I said, it's a sequel to The Cheerleaders. Just read a little bit about it. 11 years ago, the Cheerleaders put Sunnybrook on the map. 5 girls murdered. That's in the past, though. These days, the locals are more interested in the Tigers, the high school's championship-winning football team. Tigers are homegrown heroes, something positive in place with so much they like to forget. New to Sunnybrook, Hallie couldn't care less about football, but shortly after she gets assigned to cover the team for the school newspaper, one of the Tigers is poisoned at a party. Almost immediately after, Hallie starts getting strange emails warning her to stay far away from the football team. Of course, I guess we can be sure she doesn't because we wouldn't have a story, but sounds interesting. And then I got another book I just saw that just attracted me. Ghost of Honolulu, a Japanese spy, a Japanese-American spy hunter, and the untold story of Pearl Harbor by Mark Harmon and Leon Carroll Jr. I wasn't actually going to read any more modern war books. I had seen the movie, though Those Who Shall Not Grow Old. And that got me interested in World War I, so I read a couple of books. Then I read a couple of World War II, a couple on the Korean War, and I started a book on the Vietnam War, a 50-year war, so it is a long book, understandably, 900 pages. It got about 300 pages. I just kind of stopped and never picked it up again, but this book, it just kind of called out to me. And what I do when I go to Barnes & Nobles, I kind of look around and don't pick up anything right away. And then I go back around, and the things that really stuck in my brain, I get, and I got this one. So I guess I am reading another war book. One thing too, I might well read war books in ancient history because I'm reading a little more ancient history, but this is a modern history one. And then I bought a book from an author I said I would never buy from, but something about it just kind of pulled me, and that is It Ends With Us. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I knew this book was kind of a controversial book, as she's kind of a controversial author, and the movie from it, I guess, is controversial, perhaps more so the publicity campaign. That maybe part of it may be overblown. I haven't looked into it, but this book kind of pulled me into it. I have to admit, it is a beautiful cover. Blake Lively on the cover. So, never say never, I guess. I guess we should all at least give something a try, so I will be seeing what I actually think of Colleen Hoover. I've heard some people say, though, of her books, even if they're not crazy about this book, that is the one they think is decent, so we'll see what I think. Next, I just want to mention this hoodie I got. Let's see if you can see there. This is a hoodie I got from a Foxfire shop that is run by MJ of Reading This Life, who is the woman behind the I'm With the Band book club, and also tied into it the Voxer group I mentioned, the Agatha group read. And she designed and had there's hoodies and there's t-shirts that are created on demand to benefit, I believe, the American Library Association. And basically what the shirt says, probably can see, but it says, "Reading Rebels read banned books, reading this life." It's quite comfortable. A little warm today because it's kind of warm, but quite comfortable. So I just wanted to point out the hoodie. Next, I just want to show the Wobble that I completed this week. It's Powder Puff Girl Blossom. You can see like there's a bow on top. There's a ponytail and back, kind of like a hair pinner. I'm not quite sure what you call it, but this one was actually the most difficult Wobble I've done, just because of all the attachments and the things like the bow and the ponytail. And the one that I started this week is Bjorn the Narwhal. I've gotten a fair ways through the body. This is where I am right now. Color change here, which is a bit tricky. So I'm partway through Bjorn. I suspect this one I will be done by next weekend, because this one isn't as complex as Powder Puff Girl Blossom. Another thing I want to talk about is a Lego I'm working on. Actually starting working on again. I went weeks without working on it, partly because I've been doing a lot of the Wobbles, but in the little trip I made this past Wednesday to go to Barnes & Noble bookstore, there's a mall near there that I also stop at, and they have a Lego store, so I went and got a couple Legos. This isn't one of those, as I said, this is one I worked on before, but I want to complete this, and I got some others. This is what it looked like. It's Himeji Castle in Japan. Basically, they give you these booklets, actually this case, that fairly detailed instructions, and the Legos come in bags, like there's a set of number 1 bags, number 2 bags, number 3 bags, etc. You do those bags before moving on to the next bag. This is something I realized I needed after retirement, because it gives me a certain mental challenge. Just like the Wobbles too. Actually the Wobbles even more so, because they give me that challenge, and they also scratch a creativity itch, which I didn't actually realize I had. Actually, the videos do the same thing. They scratch that itch too. Here's just where I am now on this Lego set. I'm a little less than halfway through. I'll go a little closer so you can take a little bit closer look at it. Building from the base up, of course. Other than that, I walked at the local mall. I watched some WNBA games, watched a lot of YouTube videos, mostly booktuber videos. Had a couple videos that went over 100 views. I appreciate that. That's the most for any of my booktube videos. I started my outline script for my next set of music history videos I'm doing, this group from the 90s. I'm probably going to do 3, and I ask for your forbearance seeing 3, but I think I have enough to talk about for a pop video, a heavy music video, and during the 90s I had what I call my country phase. I listened to a local country station, and that led me to a bunch of country artists, so I think I have enough for each of them. Hopefully maybe I can record one of them, the pop one, in the coming week and maybe release it. But I'm putting a priority on the book videos. As far as the music I listen to a mix that Tidal created for me, a heavy music mix based upon what I listen to and similar artists. Bands like Metallica, Megadeth, Iron Maiden, Pantera, AC/DC, Black Sabbath, System of a Down, bands like that they played. Listened to that when I was walking at the mall. I'd be interested in knowing how your week went. If you'd like to let me know, please reply in the comments. Both how your reading week went and how your week went in general. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please subscribe, please hit the bell to get notified when I upload future videos. I hope you have a wonderful reading week, and I hope you have a wonderful week in general.